Right.
Hello there, welcome back to another episode of It's a Football Thing. I'm your host RJ and I'm joined by a very special guest this evening for those watching the UK, or good morning to those in sunny Australia down in Sydney, where of course I reside from. I'm joined by former Chelsea legend Paul Canoville, aka King Canners. Thank you very much for joining me. How are you this evening?
Good evening and good evening to your listeners. Yeah, the weather's cold down here, so obviously I'm trying to get my naps pretty early in the day. And it could be early in the evening. So as we know, it's just coming up to 8 p.m. or it is 8 p.m. So I've
Excellent,
just got
excellent.
still got
Just for context, Paul, could you give us an insight into how cold it actually is over there where you are?
for me, cold is where my two knees are not seen together. As soon as I lift off of the bed, they're wobbling. So that's how cold they are. I feel that cold right away. So obviously, with the experience of playing football throughout the season, um, they get to be wear and tear. So you have to look after these arthritis, as you call it, for us old pensioners.
Uh,
That's what I
I'm
keep
sure you're
saying.
doing a great job still, Paul. I bet you could still run rings around us mere mortals down here, but that's good. Look, and just for the benefit of our viewers, Paul and I connected on Twitter, and us reached out to Paul, and we said let's talk a little bit about Chelsea's current
Mm,
season. Tell some of our viewers a little bit about your background in terms of the things you're doing, not just in your playing days, but equally, probably more importantly, the things you're doing outside of football and the great influence you're having in terms of shaping broader society. So it's just a real privilege for me to be able to get you on, Paul. So
okay.
just to get the ball rolling, so to speak, I'm looking at Chelsea's current season at the moment. And I know you do a little bit of work at the club, so I'll just keep it as factual as possible. But I'm looking at the current performances of the club and where things are. So just at that macro level, from the Premier League point of view, Chelsea find themselves in third position. They had a very strong start to the season and were quite untouchable from what I could see at the beginning stages. They were winning convincingly. They were also winning unconvincingly. But the main thing is that they were getting results along the way and really setting the benchmark. And then as we kind of saw towards the December period and a little bit in January, through a combination of injuries and some COVID-induced illnesses, there
Mm,
were a few difficult results that the club had endured, but they have slowly started to show a little bit of bounce back and now find themselves in what I would classify as a pretty good position. They have progressed over the last couple of seasons, and like I said, in third position, a little bit behind second place Liverpool and a further back behind reigning Premier League champions Manchester City. But then they've also qualified into the round of 16 into the Champions League, which they
right.
hope to defend their crown, fingers crossed. They've also got an appointment with Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup, and they've also got a final against Liverpool in the EFL Cup,
Mm,
among the Club World Cup, which is taking place next week. So when
right.
you look up all those different competitions that Chelsea find themselves in, as well as the Premier League in which they're currently third place, did you just want to share your quick thoughts on how you think the Blues are going this season?
Well, like every other Chelsea fan, myself, a season that's always going to be tough. Yes, Man United, Man City, doing well as usual. We did start off, yes, at a great pace. Don't get me wrong, winning games. Well, I would say convincingly, winning games that deservedly. But there's always a case of when you've got a squad, you want to catch up with injuries. And when you catch up with injuries, that's when the fourth of play changes. But when you bring in other players that probably haven't had their full 90 minutes, you know what I mean, doing differently, it then get becomes difficult. Don't get me wrong, this is something that should be pre-seized when at the training ground, but that's what always happens. But it's still containable. We're still third, like you said, and the manager, by all means, has to have praise with that, Thomas. as well as the players that have come in and performed. Um, as well as that, we're looking at some great younger players that have coming in and being allowed to play, and especially because what it contains in how I was coming brought into the first team, whether ready to be playing in Division One. That was when I was playing football, but now the season is that these young players are being playing technically, tactically, and physically, being ready for the senior Premiership League football, and that's how Chelsea trimmed these players, young players, to play. But it's good to see. Don't get me wrong; it's great to see. I mean, where we can jolt in these young players at certain games, like the Brentford. And don't get me wrong, Brentford are playing well this season, and they've chalked off some some good heads. When I say good Premiership heads, so it's always going to be a tough one. And the reason why I say tough as well, it's a long season, and like you just mentioned, Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup. These are all the cups we're going through in our season here in England in the Premiership. And people complain, well, Chelsea have a big squad. We don't have such a big squad. We have players, yeah, like everybody else, and young players are coming through. But they're all needed. This is where it is, where we are. Yes, next week, I think EEL Cup or whatever. People think it's a little cup. Every cup is important as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, whether you win it or you lose it, but you was there in the final. And that's how it's seen. As you said, we're still there in the Champions League. FA Cup is going on. We've got Plymouth next week. This week, should I say. It's a difficult and tough season. And that's how you've got to understand, fans out there. You be patient because you had good games, you had tough games, yeah, we had bad games. Deservedly, when we had bad games, you think that, oh my God, what's going on here, Chelsea? Last week you was great. This week, this is how it stands out. This is what it stems out to. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, no, well summarized, and I agree. I see a lot of the talk online, and I think because as a fan base, particularly over the last couple of decades, we've become somewhat used to having an expectation of consistently high standards. And unfortunately, for those that have more recently become affiliated with the club, when you're used to sitting pretty up here, anytime you deviate away from that, it's all catastrophe and the world's going to end. But as you know, and you've played there, you've been there, done that, it's a long season. There's, in this day and age, there's 38 games in the Premier League, there's 10 plus games in the Champions League, there's over 60 games a year. Exactly. Ultimately, there's going to be lots of bumps along the road, and it's a roller coaster, and you've just got to do your best you can to navigate what's a turbulent season at times. But when you look at it across the board, and at times I'm guilty of it myself, because you look at some games where we play so well against the likes of Leicester, which I was privileged enough to be on Chelsea TV for the 3-0 win at that day at the King Power. And I thought, wow, what a performance. And then they backed it up with a 4-0 win against Juventus. And I thought, here we go. This season's going to be something super special. But then, the wheels can slowly start to correct themselves when you get one or two key injuries, which we had to both Ben Chilwell, Reece James, who's one of my favourite up-and-coming superstars. And all of a sudden, like you mentioned, Paul, the deep squad isn't as deep as what people make it out to be, because they're players at the end of the day. And just because their name's on a team sheet, not every player has the same profile and attribute as the person that occupies the team on a regular basis. So I do sympathise somewhat with Thomas and the squad, because they are doing their best with what they're working with, and it is an arduous season. And especially in a COVID environment where we are seeing a lot of fixture rescheduling and cancellations, and Chelsea to date haven't really been the beneficiary of these reschedule, but that's a whole separate topic, and that's fine. But I think the club is doing a pretty good job in managing those hurdles.
Yes.
Just in terms of some of the highlights of the season, like I mentioned, the 3-0 win against Leicester and the 4-0 win against Juventus. But on an individual basis, one player who I think gets a lot of affection from the Chelsea community, but might not be at the forefront of people's minds, but is someone that I've been super impressed with since he's come onto the scene this season, is young Trevor Chalobah. And
Yes.
I remember he was a bit of a diamond amongst the rough because obviously in the summer we're looking for some potential transfers in the defensive ranks, and then Thomas gave Trevor a chance, and he scored on his debut at Stamford Bridge for that long-range goal. And ever since then, I don't know what your thoughts are, Paul, but I thought he's really shown incredible maturity, played in different positions, and has really been a great find and just represents what Chelsea's talented young academy can look like if you give them a chance to flourish.
But like you said, mentioning Trevor Chamberlain, met him, had an interview with him at Black History Month just last year, and a very, very humble young lad. And like you said, I was there when he scored his debut. It's those the kind of young lads that are coming through, just like which unfortunately, like the same likes of Tammy Abraham, who's now playing in Italy, and you mentioned Reece James, Loftus, Mason Mount, Callum
Incredible.
Hudson, Fikri Tomori. We played a lot of games in the Chelsea Champions League. And don't get me wrong, these players are produced so well. And don't get me wrong, Reece, love Reece. I know his dad very well. And now, look at that, we have his sister playing in the Chelsea women's team. So
It's beautiful.
it's like, well, even these young players, and I mentioned a few of them because I'm not too often pronouncing Fistino. I mean, he's now, we're sending him out to loan him down at Huddersfield, where he's going to join his other teammate, Levi, down at Huddersfield Championship League. So those are tough leagues to play at. Don't get me wrong, you're going to gain experience before you come back and be prepared to play in the Premiership with Chelsea. You've got Joe Hay, Richard Olsen, Jude Sontop, Harvey Vell, done really well when he was playing at Brentford. And it's funny how I was talking to the young lad when I went down and done a workshop down at the Cobham, and the young lad just was behind me and was talking, and next thing I know, he's been given a chance to play for the first team against Brentford. So this is what's great to see. The young players are coming through, and you're hearing about them now. You're seeing it. They've been given a chance, and that makes a squad strong enough that, you know what I mean, prepared, that given a chance to these young lads that, you know what, for the season and coming season, Thomas, that he's still here, he'll have a headache. He'll have a headache of which player to play. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you always rely on experienced players in the team, but if you've got some young players that are coming through who can do a job, I'm telling you what, why not give them a chance? So yeah, I'm loving the season as it is at this very moment. I'm looking forward, obviously, for next season, but let's sort out 2020-21-22 season first, and produce the goods as we're doing now, as I think we're doing now.
Yeah, brilliantly said. And I've made it no secret amongst my followers and those I interact with online. One of my favourite players to represent the club, and he actually also managed us for a while, is Frank Lampard, which was someone that I'm fortunate enough to share my birthday with, and it's the same number. So I've always had a bit of an affinity to Frank, and obviously had a very distinguished playing career with the club, had a lot of success, as you've seen, and then he came through and helped manage us during that transition period, and has received a fair amount of credit for helping introduce some of the transition of those talented prospects through to the first team, with the Reeses, Tammys, Fakayos, the Masons, of course, who's been one of the figureheads of that great academy, as we all recall.
Definitely.
That nice free kick video he did, that he scored that free kick against Wolves, and it was quite poetic, if you ask me. But when you look at the current list of academy products that we've had fortunate enough to make it through to the first team, no problem. And then you look at those who we've got on loan,
Yeah.
as well as those out playing in our youth teams, you rattled off some really great names, like with Harvey Vales, and I even
Yeah.
recall Lewis Hall making his debut recently
Right.
against Chesterfield and had an absolute scorcher of a game. You mentioned Levi Colwell, who I know that a lot of us that are following from afar have heard some really, really good
Yep.
things about his progress. And it's crazy enough to suggest that he might even get a small opportunity to impress maybe next season, which
Yeah.
is
Most
crazy to
definitely.
even suggest, because maybe a few years ago that wouldn't have even been a thought. But now, because of the pathway that's been created, it's fascinating to see that Chelsea have evolved from being a club that doesn't just go for the A-listers from different clubs, but
Right.
has a genuine pathway from its own academy who have demonstrated top quality and potential themselves. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on
This
some
is
of those players,
most.
Paul, that are
These
online.
are mostly credited to the youth products down at the Cobham, and that's under Neil Bath. Got to understand
Yes,
that.
great
We've
Neil.
got one, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best youth academies throughout the world. And that's me just saying it, my opinion. The way they've come through, who you have now, you've got the Ashley Coles, you've got the Coles, Joe Cole does his bit down there, and now we've got the John Terry that's down involved down to the youth products down at the Cobham. So when you have these certain players giving off their experiences, well, these lads, they're on the special, somebody special. So if you kind of learn your trade, why not learn your trade from those players? So this is what's been good. And like to Neil Bath, what he does down there is tremendous. I love this boy. And he gives these guys so much influence that they just barely, I wouldn't say you love to play and put in the shirt for Chelsea from a young age. And even coming through the stage of the bearing of age group, young age of 7 years old, 8 years old to the age of 14 to now 18 and producing, still producing the good. That's big respect to what Neil Bath has been doing down at Cobham. But yeah, having these other elderly, when I say peers of players, are now giving their experience and sharing their experiences with the Chelsea youth players, that got to be a great advantage as well and a great help. And we love to see it, don't get me wrong, these opportunities for such players to come in and do what they got to do and represent, a great club. And we are. It shows in finals, winning cups, winning league cups. Don't get me wrong, this is what Chelsea's about, and we love it.
Absolutely. I have some bit of friendly banter with a couple of co-hosts on my show who, unfortunately for them, support Arsenal and Manchester United. But I often receive some criticism because they're slightly envious, Paul, because they'll say, RJ, you go for Chelsea, they're all about a business. I said, yeah, they're in the business of winning, guys, because that's what we've built. We have a reputation, they've got high standards, and the club from top to bottom are a very professional outfit. So, you can be envious all you like, but that's who we are, and it's a Chelsea thing. But just wanted to get your thoughts, Paul, because obviously you said it seems clear to me a very big highlight and something you're passionate about is just seeing the youngsters given an opportunity to showcase their talents. But I just, from your perspective, how important is it in a squad like what Tuchel's managing at the moment to have a blend between those really hot, talented prospects versus the more experienced players like your Angolos, like your Jorginhos, like your Thiago Silvas, who's been,
That's right.
like the Thomas said, the Benjamin Button of football, who seemingly gets better as he gets older somehow. So just your thoughts on that balance between experience versus youth.
That balance would be to play next to them, give them the opportunity to play next to those individuals. And once you play next to those individuals, you're learning from them. Yeah. At the stage when you're on the pitch, for me, when I broke into the first team, and that was the main object, was to break into the first team as a young lad when I used to play for reserve combination games. And when you did, you had the experience of these lads that was around you, and they definitely did help you. Kenneth, don't worry, calm yourself down, enjoy your game. I said, yeah. That's great. What more can I expect of that? You know what I mean? I've got lads around me now, nurturing me, helping me, and telling me, "Don't I know you could be excited because or nervous? Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm in the first team, and yeah, but no. Once you get your full running in fast 5-10 minutes, everything becomes natural for you. The likes of players like that when I had was like Sir Colin Page, Joe McLaughlin, Mickey Joy, Mickey Fillery, Johnny Bumstead, Kerry Dixon, Speedy. Those are the players, even Pat Niven, that I was playing with, and we went on to win Division One at that time. You just, yeah, naturally, for me, every week enjoyed coming in and training, and then came to that Saturday game. It developed where we was a, a team as one. It weren't just 11 players. It was a team 11 who played as one, and we supported each other. So when you're coming in the likes of a young lad playing with the team, well, the players you just mentioned, wow, what what more can you ask for? You know what I mean? Learning from them and being encouraged by them, nurturing you, talking to you throughout the game. You know what I mean? The pace of the game today is we say so quick. So therefore, you have to take your time. You got to get the ball under control now because these days when the defender comes in and that ball loose, whoosh, he's straight in, he'll knock you and ball. So this is a lot of confidence where, as I said mentioned before, tactically and technically, our young players are brought up the Chelsea way, and I love it. I love seeing it. Love watching the football. You can see the tempo, you can see the control of the players, and right away reading the game. And that's the next thing. They're passing. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, people can say what they want about business. It is a business. Football's changed to the day when I was playing, but it is a business. And it's not just here at Chelsea, it's everywhere. And where they are, that you got now managers, not even managers, chairmen that are coming in and buying the club. Why do you think they're buying the club? That club's good enough for them to buy because they see it as a club that's going to win cups throughout the season. And they're promoting them, not just here in England, they're promoting them all over the world. This is where I didn't realise how many fans throughout the world that support Chelsea. It's unbelievable. So yes, it is a big business, but you got to be winning to make it advantage for any club, and that's what Chelsea do.
Yeah, it's a whole of club operation, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of clubs across Europe and to an extent as well in England where it's not always about money equals success
Mm,
because if it's not sustainable and it doesn't go from the top to the bottom or the ground grassroots level, it really becomes a bit of a papering over the cracks and you're not really addressing the fundamentals of what makes a club successful. And like you mentioned, the game has obviously evolved as more investment has been made into making it at that higher level, but just recognizing the amount of effort and investment at the grassroots level. From what your experiences are, Paul, and you've seen it because you've been around the traps and you're quite involved with the club. How much would you say for those? Because obviously people like myself who are watching from the outside, how much time and effort is placed in nurturing the youngsters both from a physical level as they evolve because they go through puberty, etc. And you sort out the men from the boys, so to speak,
mm,
but also tactically and behaviorally, because as you know, in today's professional footballing landscape, it's not just about how good you are on the field, it's how good you manage your character off the field. So,
mm.
just any thoughts you have about the club's approach to helping the youngsters of today flourish for tomorrow?
Most definitely, it's totally different from when I was playing. As a young player, is more like an investment, most definitely. And don't get me wrong, from he comes to the club and produces throughout the season and keeps playing, he'll be then to nurtured onto playing, as you just mentioned, going on to loaning to other clubs. That's how good it is that he can come back stronger, mindfully, technically, physically, and be prepared, as I said, for Premiership football and with Chelsea. Though at Cobham, the facility there at Cobham is unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, where we used to play and train at Hayes Harlington, which was near the Heathrow Airport, it was nothing compared to how Cobham is. It was just pure trees around and grass, and you can tell when it
They
was
don't
cold.
make them tough like you anymore, Paul.
No,
They're not tough
it
like
was
you guys.
cold. It was cold, and seriously, the old tea used to come in regular. That little tea before the game, trust me, came in handy. But yeah, they're training some great facilities, these young lads. And for me, if you're training in that, you can't play anywhere else. It's unbelievable pitches down there, so level, training ground pitches. Probably can be seen as better than some of the Division 2 pitches, to be honest. That's how these pitches are. You can play a pool table on these pitches. Seriously, Paul. But yeah, the difference of that, don't get me wrong, of learning, controlling, technical, tactical, it can only get better. It can only enhance a player who comes there, and don't get me wrong, wants to play his game, wants to learn his trade, wants to learn better in the position. What more when you're coming down and playing at Cobham training ground? So yeah, these young guys, they're doing well, and they're getting nurtured well, and they've been taught their trade, and that's much better. When you'll be able to do that, you'll be brought into the first team, and that's what Thomas has seen with that. And he's not afraid to put these young lads in. You know what I mean? He's put them in right at the right time. Don't get me wrong, and they're coming through just nicely, just nicely.
Yeah, it's been great because I know for a while Chelsea and the fans, we often used to cop a little bit of flack from some rivals saying, "Oh, you've got this great loan army, you've got these academy, but you're not giving them a genuine chance to shine, etc., etc." All that rhetoric, which was just taken with a bit of pinch of salt, of course, especially the last few seasons, which we've completely distilled that myth. But from my perspective, I see the great work that Neil and the whole club has done at nurturing that academy, providing the facilities, giving them the pathway to succeed, either if it's staying permanently at Chelsea or going temporarily out on loan. I see that whole setup from the grassroots level as being a win-win outcome for everybody involved, because obviously from the player that's coming through the system, they're being subject to the best environment possible to maximize their talent. If they go out on loan and they impress, they give themselves an opportunity to come back into the first team.
That's right.
If they flourish out on loan, and there's still, the reality is not everybody can play in the first team. That's just how football works, because there's plenty of talent, but there's sometimes not enough supply to meet demand.
Right.
If they're good enough, which more often than not at Chelsea you'll end up going to another club, and the club as well would have got a bit of return on investment, and the player will get a chance to shine. So it's a win-win as a result of just how good that foundation is that the club has set. But just now, I just want to transition the conversation away from the great youngsters, because I could talk about them all day, but just to give the audience some perspective of your playing time, Paul, because I know you did share about the differences in today versus yesteryear. But just at a high level, just want to hear some of your reflections in terms of some of the highlights and any sort of stories that you have that you'd want to share with the audience about some of the good reflections you have.
Don't get me wrong, a young lad that wanted to be a professional footballer and given that opportunity by John Neal, rest his soul, the manager that then 81, 85, 86. And to join Chelsea at the time, and I mentioned those players that I mentioned earlier, like John Bumpstead, Colin Pate, Eddie Nowitzki, we had the right back, Mickey Thomas, Joey Jones. To play or be on the pitch with these lads who encouraged me, don't get me wrong, when I was given my opportunity, was a day come true. It was nervous. Everybody knows the story by now. If you haven't, read it. Black and Blue, my autobiography. Read
Yeah, and
it,
we're going to
and
share a
you will
link, Paul,
understand
to
that.
your website, etc., and
Yeah.
obviously the work you're supporting,
So
which we'll touch on later. Yeah.
it wasn't a confident booster. It was a difficult time for me. But with these lads that kept encouraging me, it helped. Um, likes of Pacey, likes of Joey Jones, especially Mickey Thomas. And you can see Mickey Thomas, I came along and was playing on the left. And at that time, we call it left wing. And then a player like Mickey Thomas who comes and stands and plays in that same position, you had to reflect and think, you know what? I think he deserved to play before me. And I had to think like that, don't get me wrong, even though I wanted to. But there was times that, two of us could play on the pitch. And that was another thing, you know what I mean? That we put in some input in the game. But I think everybody, when we talk about the comeback, came in more or less the same EL Cup. We called it the Milk Cup at that time, against Sheffield Wednesday. Losing, at first half 3-0 down.
Yeah.
From when I was added, then from the second half right away, in 11 seconds, I scored a goal, which made it 3-1.
Incredible. 11 seconds, I remember.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It was, I think, why it was so important for me that day, because I was meeting my father, who separated. My mom separated when I was 2 years old, so I hadn't seen him at all from since then. So we'd been in touch, and he now moved down to Sheffield. And with that, I invited him to see me play a game, and not one of my parents had ever seen me play football live or ever seen me play football at all. So this was an opportunity for him to see me. And it was kind of really funny that the first half was all nerves for me because I was constantly thinking what I was going to say to him. But watching the game, thinking when they scored the first, I thought, yeah, we're good enough to get back. But from 3-0 down, I'm thinking, yeah, we're out of this cup. Simple as. And you're playing away. So, but yeah, as I said, came on 11 seconds, scored the first. Nicky Thomas got second, Kerry got the third, and I got the fourth. And might have thought he might have been the winner. Don't get me wrong, until obviously Doug Ruthie gave a penalty away that the game finished for all. And I think everybody from that game itself had accepted me, who I was, Paul Canoville, a player, a Chelsea player. My fans had accepted me. So I think that's more or less one of the best highlights of my career, that Chelsea, most definitely. And everybody reminds me of it, so it's not a thing I can get away from, as I do when I do my hospitality duties down at the Grub Club on match days. I love that scenario because it's meeting fans of that generation. Duke could tell me back then how difficult it was to follow Chelsea, Paul. You think now that the games that they played would give them any heartache or any heart attacks. The games back in the days when we was playing, oh man, it switched. It was, I even sat there and watched games when I remember Champions League semi-final or something like quarter-final. Could have been against Liverpool. And it was like, the game had changed so much. I think we were losing from the first leg until the second leg. They came down and it was like, oh my God. I met a person who, at the time I was down going to the hospital for my little health period. And one of the fans was there in the wheelchair, and he recognized me and said, "Oh my God, Paul, was you at the game?" I said, "Yes." That game, I thought I had a heart attack. The guy said he was in the wheelchair, and he thought it was. That's what I'm saying. The kind of games when you see the love when you have for your club, and you see how they perform on the day. It's like a game of goals that were going either way. You didn't know how the game was going to finish. Those are the kind of games you think, "Oh my God, why do we support Chelsea?" Don't get me wrong. Those everybody know, if you don't know, who I supported first before I came to Chelsea, and
We'll forget that. Don't worry.
That was it. I fell in love with it, the club, and here we are now. So,
Yeah, it's fascinating story, Paul. Look, you said it was one of your dreams, obviously, to make the cut and crack into first team football. But
Yes.
I'm sure when you reflect on your post playing days and you hear those stories from fans that have seen you play live, and you gave them those heart attack moments, or they witnessed some of the more turbulent times. Not that today's not turbulent, of course, but we're just more used to success.
Yep.
It must be rewarding to know just how much of an influence you've had on the fans, as well as your own personal achievements, which even yourself, like you mentioned, it's well publicized. You've been very transparent about the trials and tribulations you've experienced. But I can only sympathize about what would have been like, but also it must be nice to know that even though your time playing for the club, you made over 100 appearances, you played in the early 80s for a few years with the club, but your legacy off the field and all of the importance that you've had in terms of influencing social change and the broader, bigger picture stuff, that must be something that makes you pretty proud of. Of course, there's lots of work to be done. And I know that I was mentioned earlier about sharing your website. So I just want to let people know, and I will put it in later in the description. But
Okay.
so those, as part of your Paul Canoville Foundation, do you just want to talk a little bit about the work that does, just to help give our audience a bit of an understanding there?
Came around in 2004. I was introduced back, also invited back to Chelsea, and with that, I was asked to do some workshops at schools, and with that, I went in talking to young kids at the primary schools, secondary schools, and you can imagine I was thinking, hold on, these kids were so young, they weren't even born when I was playing. But as you said, the techniques that goes on with the internet, the information on Google now and Wikipedia was all out there, and I didn't even know about it. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's how they knew about me. So, it was at first just to share my growing up as a kid, following dreams, resilience, and notice how these kids were just listening and taking in what I was talking about, and the development of how important our school education was, and obviously how I took it very lightly, and where I got lost with it because after now I had to retire at the early stage of my career. Now didn't realize what was I going to do because I didn't take seriously my education. So it was important to draft those messages across, and obviously now the effects of how racism is as well, and not just in the game, in society itself, and what to expect. So that's why I've started the foundation in 2015, the Paul Canoville Foundation, where I go around in schools. I've been invited abroad. It's great. Now, as you said, I take this where last year at this time it was a very serious health condition where nearly I was told I never was lucky to come through. With that, and the man above has obviously got something for me, that why I'm still here, and it was serious. That I'm using this platform now to go out and speak out about the effects of racism. I take that very serious, and I think it needed for me to go out and talk to the schools and the young kids that are coming up to understand what it means and how it affects, and what better stage than to do that. Don't get me wrong, foundation is not easy because we do rely on funding. I'm now, as well as that, ambassador of the Crime Stoppers and Fearless.com organization, and this is about what's happening with our young kids of today. Kids taking kids' lives, youth lives, the knife crime, and it's about now that not every youth are criminals. Trust me when I say this, not every youth here in England are criminals, and they want to report crime. But given the opportunity, when they think about doing that, the lapse or relapse of coming back and being attacked because you're seen as a snitch, that's the fear they're having, and the reason why they're not reporting. But with this fearless organisation, Crime Stoppers, it's allowing the youth to report crime anonymously. And when I say anonymously, I've heard it on the phone line that they can report it. Now the police won't get involved. When I say they won't know who they are. They won't know their email. They won't know their phone number. They won't know anything about them. But they can report that crime to the police, and then the police can go and investigate it. So it's not seen as you're a snitch. You got to be seen as a superhero. You got to be seen as something that you now want to look after your community, because you want your community safe again. And that's what I'm there supporting this so much, because I feel the same. Because I know not every kid likes to know what's happening in their community where another person be done. We've had 30 young kids whose life's been taken just last year. 30, just like that. What's that? A parent who's losing a son or losing a daughter for
it's tragic. Yeah.
Of course it is, man. This is something that's got to be looked at in society as well. So as well as government, and you know what I mean, this is what I do right now. I've been given that opportunity and I'm taking it. I'm going to be using this platform to speak out loud, and I want all my peers to get involved, players to get involved as well as that. So that's where I am at the moment with my foundation. It's been great. I've got a great team behind me, and we organise obviously not just that with the black and blue events, obviously, of recognising the black players who are at Chelsea and hearing their stories. And we're looking for a great event this year. It'll be my 40 years of playing for Chelsea. And
that's right,
Gus,
it is. Yeah.
Gus Hullett, 25 years of the first black player won the FA Cup for Chelsea. He was a manager. You got to look at those achievements and see how serious this is. Come on, we've come a long way here at Chelsea, and why not share that? So I'm looking forward to that event there. Hopefully you can then by then visit and come over from Australia.
That would be something.
So come and support it. So do listen out for those events. But if you want to get interested, support the foundation anyway, get in touch. It's www.paulcanavillefoundation.co.uk. I say again, www.paulcanavillefoundation.co.uk. That's what we're about.
Yeah. And for those that are watching, of course, and you can see this later, Paul's repeated it. We're showing it on the screen. We'll put a link in the description. I love, Paul, obviously, for our interactions on Twitter is not just Paul the Chelsea legend, but Paul the human, which is first and foremost for me. And that's why I've always been a big fan of your daily tweets about posting positive comments and trying to affect social change. And I'm a big fan of prevention rather than cure of some things. So I think you're right. Education at the coalface is really important to set the tone from the get-go and set up for success rather than trying to be reactionary. So look, it's one of those things we're all recognize the practical challenges that it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But as you mentioned, with what's coming up in the Chelsea community, from the days when you started, which was obviously very challenging and you had to overcome some serious hurdles, to where they are now, it shows you that with persistence to go to distance, you can affect some positive change, but it's an ongoing battle and everybody's got to play their part. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So big up to the work that yourself and those in the foundation are doing, as well as what's happening over in the Crime Stoppers world, because like you said, 30 lives taken is 30 too many as far as we're all concerned. So we've got to aim towards zero. But just pivoting back, just as I'm conscious of your time and we will look to wind things down, just wanted to give your final thoughts on what are some of the current things you are doing with the club at the moment, and are you still in touch with the regular players like your Pat Nevins, or is it something now that you guys are all sort of separated now?
Well, as I said, I do my hospitality duties on match days. I'm always in touch with Pat. Pat is a patron to my foundation, so we get on very well.
Beautiful.
And it's good to see him when on the match day doing his bit of presenting, whether it's for the club or it's just sports on 5 and whatever. Working with the likes of, when I say Kerry Dixon, Johnny Bumpstead, Colin Pates, these lads, even Chopper Harris and Gary Triggers,
Wow.
working with these young, peers and ex-players of Chelsea, it makes it so easy on the day. Still, we have that banter as we often did when we was in the changing rooms. So you enjoy it, as I said. On a match day, meeting those fans of old and the fans of new, and they're sharing. You don't know who this is, but this is Paul Canoville, and being told who's he? He was the first black player that, trust me, he took a lot of, and so forth. So when can I have a signature? Can I have a picture? Yeah, that's an honor in itself. And you know what? You mentioned it, having now been honoured with the Canoville suite that was named after me. This season, should I say? It was just last year. It's a great honour. Don't get me wrong.
I'll have to come check it out, Paul, sometime.
Yeah, man.
You can show me around.
I'm still at awe about it, because the last time I come to the club and I just see it and I think it's going to be removed. The name's going to be removed, but it's still there, and it's a great honour. Don't get me wrong. The biggest suite at Chelsea. So yeah, I'm really honoured about that.
No, it would be something incredible. I'm sure it's going to be there for many moons to come. Well past our time, Paul, so be rest assured. Just in terms of a couple of quick fire questions, so you don't have to expand too much, as a nice wind down, because I've loved this episode. You've made my day in the next couple of years, to be honest with you. But just very quickly, Chelsea related, so very lighthearted. Just one of the favourite goals you've seen as a Chelsea fan. Love always asking our fans this question.
Oh, you know what? Oh, gosh.
Because you've scored some good goals, but as a fan?
As a fan, a real important goal, and it was Champions League. And they played away, I think was it in Germany or Spain, against Barcelona. The player's not with us now. The Brazilian, oh gosh, I think he plays in Japan. Is it Luis? No, he plays in Japan now.
Oscar.
No, not Oscar.
No,
What's the other
Japan. Which one was it?
Played in midfield though. Is it J or
Ramirez? G? No.
Ramirez, yeah, Ramirez. Yeah. And he scored that winning when he lobbed the keeper. When it was a great pass from Lampard against Barcelona.
2012 semi-final.
Oh my gosh, that just broke my heart. Yeah. That itself was unbelievable. To beat Barcelona, you know how difficult it was, and that stayed there was great. Went on to the final, and who did we play? Bayern Munich, and we're in the final in Germany as well. Come on, man. That alone in itself, I was sitting amongst a lot of Tottenham fans watching this game, and they obviously wanted us to lose so they could get qualify for the Champions League the next season. We couldn't allow that, so I'm sorry.
No. Forever in our shadows, unfortunately.
Most definitely, that was a great for me. The memory of a goal that will stand up. We've had some great goals. We had some great players as well that have been here at Chelsea, like Hazard, one goal against, and when he came on and against Tottenham needed that win to make it. I think could have gone on to win. Maybe could have had a chance to win the Premier that time.
I think it was the Battle of the Bridge, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2-0
and had to come on and finish that one, made it 2-2. That was a brilliant day, brilliant game. So those are the kind of games I used to, you know what I mean? I enjoyed being at the sideline, watching those games. Score lines, don't get me wrong, some of it upsetting, some were great as such, but those mainly were always pinned in my mind mostly.
I'll test your memory here, Paul. Do you remember the goal in, I think it was December of 2006? It was a Stamford Bridge. Lampard laid off, looked like a simple pass to an on-running Michael Essien, and he just curled it from about 35 yards against Arsenal.
What a hit.
Yeah, and I remember Arsene Wenger was furious, and Ashley Cole was playing for us. It was incredible.
Let me tell you, I see one. You mentioned the player. Oh God, what's him again? Who was that midfielder?
Essien.
Not Lampard. Essien. What a player Essien was.
Yes.
When he came along, they thought. He said he was like a lion. Don't get me wrong, he's a young African boy, but he was so tough. And I've heard they said there was one player that I didn't like to play against. I forget the guy's name, and he said it was against SGM when that boy, he was so physically tough. And you know, SGM used to played right, was it right back or left back? He used to play SGM before being put in the midfield and Josie put him in. But
I think a right back, wasn't he?
Yeah, he hit a blinder. Oh my God, I'm sure it was against Barcelona again.
Yeah, the volley, I think.
Oh, what a finish. We just went, where did that come in? He just hit it and it went, hit the bar underneath and went, woof.
Yes.
That alone, what a game. Another, catastrophe. It was like, it was all going, the jog bars. And don't get me wrong,
Iniesta's last-minute goal to crush our spirits. Yes.
I always thought, you know what, if there was one player I'd love to play with, and that would have been me supporting him, and that would have been Drogba. He would have scored some goals for me, boy. I'm telling you, it would have been so easy to supply and put balls in for Drogba, the way he was finishing and getting on, at the end of those balls. So, yeah, we've had some great teams. That's what I'm saying. We're going to do a program. Listen out for it, a little podcast, a live podcast. Who wouldn't want to be Chelsea? But it is about these black players that come here through after me at Chelsea. Oh, you can name quite a few. I certainly think there's about 3 sets of first team throughout them.
So high quality ones, Paul. That's for sure.
Oh, definitely. So listen out for that. It's going to be top drawer, definitely.
Beautiful. You actually answered my second quickfire question, which is a player or two you'd love to play with, and you said the King Didier Drogba. So that's
most definitely
foresight.
And you know what? It's an honor that he recognized me, and I met him one time from hospitality, and he was there to watch a game. And when I saw him, my eyes lit up, and we opened the door, and I went to him, hi Drogba, how you doing? I know you. You're Paul Canoville. And I thought, you knew me? That itself was an honor. And I'm thinking, oh, you just really kind of not put yourself down, but you don't recognize yourself, sometimes. You know what I mean? And people say, Paul, you're a legend. And I don't really...
Exactly. You're one of the people that
you know what I mean? Don't think of it like that. But you know what? When you've got players like that, who Drogba recognizes it and sends a message through Twitter to you, that in itself is an honor for me, most definitely. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And last question, Paul, just to wrap it up nice and quickly for you. How many trophies are we going to win this season, and which ones are they?
Good some. And as long as we're into those finals, we can look at quite a few. And if that's the case, I'd say more than Tottenham.
Beautiful. That's factual already because we've won the Super Cup.
There you go.
That's great.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you, man.
Excellent. Look, everyone, just thanks for those who will be watching with us. As I said earlier, Paul Canoville, aka King Canners, Chelsea legend, has been gracious enough to give almost an hour of his time, which is over budget. So thank you very much, Paul. You will find a link in the description to Paul's website. So I strongly encourage you to check that out and really absorb the key messages that Paul and his crew are promoting within it, because it's all about the bigger picture. Paul, again, I just want to say a big, massive thank you. It's been an incredible honor for me personally to have you on the show, and I look forward to bringing you on next time and keeping in touch.
No problem, John. Hey, thanks for having me again. And, for your supporters out there, keep supporting us Blues. London is blue. Okay?
Over and out, guys.
See you later, man. Thanks a lot. See ya.